All right. Welcome back, my regular viewers, listeners, and watchers. And of course, if you happen to be here for the very first time, welcome. Before I go any further, my name is Rahul George, India's premier eye hypnosis coach and your personal guide. So, in the words of Renuka of the 90s, मुझे आपसे कुछ कहना है. So, for those of you who are kids of the 90s, you know exactly who I'm referring to. As I used to call her, Renuka Shahnane. This is Renuka Shahane. And this, I think, used to be the ad that used to come on. I guess it would have been Doordarshan Fridays, I think it used to be, Friday 9 p.m. And of course, I'm referring to the Whisper ad that used to come on at 9 p.m. So, of course, it's not as quote unquote controversial as the ad was way back then because it was literally the first of its kind in the way that they had kind of designed the ad and structured the ad. So today, of course, the reason why I or let me put it this way, the 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 theme of today's pod is something which is um, equally controversial to an extent, but also more importantly, I think it's something which is really, really important um, for all of us, especially if we are healers, if we are digital coaches, people who already have been blessed to um, to realize that we are onto something and that we are here doing something that is truly uh, important and of significance, not only in our lives, but in the lives of people that we work with. Now, having said all of that, especially like I said, if you are a healer, if you are a digital coach, or maybe even a student of personal development or self development, um, what I'm talking about today, and in fact, that is the theme of today's pod, which is the power of sitting. Now, of course, some of you may be familiar with what we mean by the power of sitting. But if you are new to this, if you have not heard this before, what I'm talking to and what I'm referring to specifically when I talk about the power of sitting is sitting essentially means that if you follow the Zen tradition, you literally sit on your mat um, and you face a wall. And that is essentially all that you do. So it's a different form of meditation, obviously. But the essence, the principle behind it is what I wanted to talk to you about today. And this is something that I have of late been noticing more and more. I've been now practicing more and more. Of course, I'm yet to fully establish the habit of sitting, which is essentially looking at the wall and just being in that space and being present to whatever is coming up. But I've found the next best thing, which is, whether it is, let's say, when I'm traveling in the cab or maybe when I'm, at home or when I'm out. And the practice is basically to just keep my phone aside and to just sit. Now, for most of you, if you are anything like me, or if you are like me, you will know that it sounds easier than said than done. And when you actually start to practice, when you actually start to try, pretty soon you'll realize that it is actually one of the hardest things to do. And this is something that I have, I'm reached a point now where I've realized that it's at some level just the way that our minds, our brains, our thinking has been wired over the last maybe 5, maybe 10 years, such that today to just sit and not look at our phones. Now, again, here's the thing. Here's the disclaimer, right? I do not enjoy scrolling on, the short form, which is obviously it's not TikTok, but it's reels and shorts, because I know, or even stories for that matter, because I know uh, if I do, it'll be like, going through an entire bag of chips, right? Um, if you've had this experience before, you know exactly what I mean. And of course, you can replace the bag of chips with whatever else that is the equivalent for you, right? You start with one, and just like that ad, the line used to be, no one can eat just one. When it comes to scrolling, we've all had that experience. So, what am I getting at? That I have been noticing of late, how strange this feels. Say, if I'm in the cab, I just sit and I look. I may look out, at other uh, cabs, or basically traffic, or I may just look out. And it's a really, really powerful, um, uh, for lack of a better word, I'll call it a process, because that becomes then the beginning of going deeper. Maybe you've tried meditating with your eyes closed, but this, in my personal opinion, I've started to recognize the power of it. So usually, while, like I said, I do not, as a habit, I do not look at scrolling on the short content, but I do the exact opposite, which means I'm the kind of person that can go through an entire 2, 3 hour podcast. Now, of course, granted, I have my way around it, which is I listen at 1.75, especially if it's on YouTube, right? The speed. Um, but it's still, an hour and a half, 2 hours at a stretch. And a lot of times it's just playing. Some of it, obviously, I'm taking consciously, a lot of it unconsciously. And, obviously, if I'm studying a particular subject matter and I'm listening to 3 or 4 of these podcasts that fit into that subject, sooner or later, in one form or the other, there will be ideas that will kind of, cross reference. So these are things that I've been doing now for some time. While of course it has its positives, the one thing I realized is that, until recently, it was really difficult to not be doing anything, to not be consuming. So going back to where we started today, like I said, this is something that might seem controversial, just like the ad was, you know, what is it, 30, 40 years ago, um, literally on prime time talking about sanitary pads and, um, the it's something that um, typically doesn't get talked about in families, whether it is to the openly, that is to the, whether it's a father talking to his daughter, um, or in general, anybody. Like, nobody typically would want to talk about it. And I can even sense even now, it's like, if you've not had that experience and you've not been able to have too many of these conversations, you don't even have the language to have a conversation about it. So, in essence, what I'm saying here is, just like then, now it's so important for us to talk about something which, to a lot of people, will seem controversial because, simply put, uh, it's easier to get lost in our distractions, and it's harder to just be with ourselves. And now I can talk about it because I've obviously been practicing it now for some time, and I realize that it really is a powerful um, it is a powerful resource. So, I know today's pod has been a little different than what we are normally used to listening to, but this is my intention to share with you, and especially if you are a healer, you're a digital coach, or if you're a student of personal development, and you are truly committed to changing the course of your life. One is, I would say, test this out. Don't take my word for it. Test it out. So actually, stay off or stay away from your phone for maybe 10 minutes initially, maybe half an hour. And I'm talking about where you're doing it consciously. You're genuinely, literally saying, okay, I'm going to keep my phone aside, and then I'm going to just be, right? So I'm not going to look at no books, no nothing. I'm just going to sit, right? If you choose to be adventurous and you say, okay, I'm just going to sit where there's a wall in front of me and I'm just going to look at the wall, do it. You come back and tell me what your experience was. I myself, over the course of this week, I am going to be experimenting because this is something I've been thinking now for some time. I did the first version, which was I just keep my phone aside. Now, of course, I will be experimenting with what are my experiences when I'm just sitting. So, with that, of course, as I start to wrap today's pod, just a reminder, especially if you are a healer, or a digital coach, or a student of personal development, and if there's any way in which I can help you, please do get in touch and let me know how I can help you. And if not me, if you can, seek out anybody who you believe can help you, please do that. Okay. Um, and having said all of that, of course, remember to live with purpose. I look forward to seeing you in the next pod. Have a wonderful, wonderful day ahead. God bless, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.